the IPS Deprogram. And these are all just rough drafts. I'd consider these to be drafts of what will be a final product, but I'm developing this series called History Benders, based on the premise that the apparent systemic fake news has a cumulative effect of warping our history or directing it or curating it. And there is, for all intents and purposes, a monopoly over the process of history creation, the manufacture of a historic timeline that the consensus agrees is real. And so I want to do a few character studies and make certain connections. Like, for example, the composite characters of Elon Musk or Donald Trump. We're talking about individuals who exist in the, quote, real world via the news, but also have an existence in the realm of fiction with these counterparts in that arena, oftentimes conscious and deliberate, other times they claim it's just coincidental. And I want to go through Donald Trump first and where he's appeared within the entertainment media in what would be considered predictive programming, and what specific psyops these movies were foreshadowing or were a part of. So just to get started here, Biff Tannen based on Donald Trump, and if you're familiar with Back to the Future, it foreshadowed 9/11 in specific ways. But it also foreshadowed the Trump presidency. And this is kind of a recurring theme. So we have Trackdown 1958. It foreshadowed the presidency, the build the wall, the arrest, the con man named Trump. And so it didn't specifically reference a 9/11 or even Butler, for example. Then someone had brought up this Ronald Grump Sesame Street from '88, which sounds hilarious, where Ronald Grump uses climate change to wreck Sesame Street. Anyway, that would fall into that category. Then let's move up to Super Mario Brothers, where King Koopa is played by Dennis Hopper. But Koopa Towers, the Twin Towers melt. But that's definitely inspired by Trump. So we would connect Super Mario Brothers, therefore, to 9/11. Gremlins 2 had a 9/11 reference with some individual who's based on Trump who owns a tower, towers burning, etc. So that one, Gremlins 2, would connect to 9/11. Senator McLaughlin in Machete 2010, played by Robert De Niro. That one would be one of the earliest so far that connects to Butler, Pennsylvania, and the 7/13/2024 shooting. Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko has 9/11 connections and some fascinating stuff when you get into his the director and the director's father working on the, I think it's the Viking rover, the Mars rover. So you got NASA and Hollywood predictive programming for 9/11 in the same family. Donnie Darko, though, also has foreshadowing of the Trump presidency itself. Donnie himself would be a proxy of Donald Trump. Now, Tony Soprano, this one's just kind of minor, but maybe not, because it ties into the characterization of Trump as this mob boss. We called him a bad Don, like Abaddon, the angel over the abyss. So Tony Soprano, end of season 1, gets shot in the ear, and it has some connections to Coppola's Godfather. So we'll go ahead and connect that one to Butler. The Boys, Homelander, 100% based on Trump. They changed the Assassination Run's title because of the proximity of its release to Butler, Pennsylvania. Captain America changed their, and that's when you had the Harrison Ford becoming the Red Hulk, which is a MAGA reference, I think. But that one too, they changed the trailer because of the proximity. It was released a day before Butler, and it featured the president at a podium getting shot at. A Man in Full is based on Trump, not the original Tom Wolfe novel, but the Netflix version. And Charlie Coker, I think his name is Trump, and they made Trump's entire family part of the plot. And he gets taken down by the machinations of the Chicago mayor, who I think represents Obama. But this one is really about Trump, the arrest, the scandals. It's not about 9/11. It's not about Butler. And then we have, what is this one up here? Oh, Caped Crusader. He's actually portrayed as Rupert Thorne, and he gets his ear clipped. So that one would be a Butler. So anyway, just kind of a starting point here for this talk is we're looking at the pre-existing templates in place for world stage characters as they emerge, the composite that we're given for each, how they build these characters up and their component parts, and then more specifically, which particular world stage events are they in relation to. And so you see a lot of, from the earliest, the predictive content for him as a president, Biff Tannen as a president. But that one, interestingly, and I thought we'd start seeing this type of thing, now you can see how Back to the Future foreshadowed not just 9/11, but also the presidency of Trump. Because people noticed the 9/11 stuff before Trump was president. So my point is, if a movie contains any kind of predictive content foreshadowing for fake events, if you find one example, there might be more. I mean, there were people hung up on The Shining for decades because of the Apollo 11 stuff, and none of them have even noticed that it was foreshadowing 9/11. So it was retroactively revealing Apollo 11, but it was actually foreshadowing 9/11. And if you're not familiar with it, there's a number of scenes in there, these shots that are very well made and put together to convey 9/11. Like Danny going down the hallway, speeding towards the twins, and then he cuts a hard left, and the next scene, the twins are on the ground, bloodied, there's a fireman's axe, an upturned chair. It just looks like Ground Zero, in flesh though. And the next scene, he's throwing darts, and he's next to this AT&T phone booth, which would tie into the building there, and the twins are right next to him. So they kind of they actually have these twins standing in for the Twin Towers, and he's throwing the darts. And there's a few other scenes in there, the twin elevators, the blood pouring out, but there's quite a few elements in there. And it ties in with Space Odyssey 2001 as well, which seemed to even have foreshadowing for not only Ground Zero, but the monolith on the moon. At the moon base, the excavation looks like the monolith Millennium Hotel, which is designed for Space Odyssey, there at Ground Zero, overlooking the disaster. All right, let me go and just catch up on your comments before we get much further. So just so you know, we're working on History Benders. History Benders will be a well-produced series of whiteboard presentations, discussions regarding this observed aspect of media. I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's the relationship between entertainment and fake events and their seeming purpose of augmenting our worldview and directing our history. All right, let's go. Rocky USA, Armin Ra, Marcel, let's see. Swiss says, talk about the Book of Enoch. Interesting book. I was in the military at the time, and I got the day off to hang out on this religious retreat. I think it was called A Day with God or something. But I just spent the day reading the Book of Enoch. And I had the one that was published. It had like this theory about the origin of evil being fallen angels and how they came down and corrupted man, and how the flood wiped out them bodily, but their spirits remain and continue to possess people in power. I mean, interesting theory. The angels falling thing is like not a one-time thing. You got the Watchers, and then you have the whole Paradise Lost, Satan leading a rebellion. What's the symbolism associated with the recent demolition of the East Wing of the White House? Yeah, that's fascinating what's going on at the White House. You have Trump demolishing the East Wing. That has to mean something, because remember, we were talking about the significance of 88s, because you had the Pope die at 88, and then Klaus Schwab steps down from the World Economic Forum at 88. And we're like, what is with this 88 thing? Because it's been a consistent connection, even with Trump. And there's this, I'm like, what is going on with this? But at the time, he put 2 flagpoles, if you recall, 88-foot tall flagpoles at each side of the White House. Now, again, I don't know what that means, but it was just part of this ongoing pattern. And of course, 88, HH, you see these things consistently correlated, but we noticed the twin flagpoles going up at the time and thought there must be some meaning to it. Joined by Portal Complex, Andrea says the new ballroom will be on a checkered floor. Yeah, of course. Very Masony. Marcel has brought 5 titanium blue wrenches. One for Frank Castle, LG, Kate Emma, Plain Decoded, and Mike Archangel. What's up, Blap? Blap says, here for my deprogramming. Yeah, and you know, it is an active process. You can't just say, I'm deprogrammed. I mean, you can be mind-war inoculated, and once you see through it, it's not like you get enraptured by it again. But it's a verb. It's not a state, because what we're talking about here is observing the program in progress and differentiating it from the real thing. In other words, their subjective hyperstitions, their reality augmentations can be separated from the real world. You can look at these things and not be confused. You know, it's like living with a liar. Like, you can recognize lies from truth. It's not ideal, but we live with a liar that's central to all of our lives. And so deprogramming, again, is an active process of not being misinformed, but being informed about the deluge of misinformation and how it is processed by the masses. And you can look at what they're being programmed with as an indicator of what's to come. That's the whole reason for looking so closely at this so-called predictive programming. And the predictive programming topic has really evolved. That's not even a right term. It's kind of a misnomer. In about 2022, we started observing the real-time correlations. And the thing is, okay, it's real time. Let's say you have something on Netflix. We'll say Waco, American Apocalypse. And then Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco the day after that comes out. Now, I would call this concurrent because these are real-time correlations and connections that are being made, that are being pumped out into the echo chamber for everyone to notice without making these explicit connections that this is intentional. But even though this looks like a coincidence, the timing of it, you also have to include the fact that the fictional version of anything has been produced in the past, might be a year, 2 years, or whatever. So the coordinated release times is one of the facts that we consistently notice, one of the facets of this thing that take the conversation of predictive programming out of the realm of cherry picking, selectivity bias, which is what you get accused of, or Texas sharpshooter fallacy. It's like, no, that's not what we're doing. We're looking at the real-time correlations, and by real time, we mean to point out that for this to be timed this way, it means that the supposed real event would have been scripted in advance as well. If you think about this, we're talking about something put onto the schedule for the regular programming with it, whatever platform it is, we'll just say Netflix. But if the fake event that correlates with it so perfectly, as we often see, if that's also timed with it, then you'd have to kind of presume, well, both of these things were scheduled in advance, which is just a way of saying they are, in fact, proactively creating history. That news isn't random every day. Now, a lot of the regular stuff is, obviously, but it's the fake events, the ones that grab all the clicks and the headlines. These are the events that steer the dominant narrative that everything else bounces off of. So as fake as the Charlie Kirk event is, look how it has bent the real world's news. Real people getting involved, real opinions being formulated about this event, real political polarization. So none of us here are saying all news is fake. That's a ridiculous generalization. But we are pointing out here that all real news is still framed by a lot of fake news that it tacitly just accepts as real. So it's all tainted. And that's what I mean when I say that the world stage and everyone on it is essentially misinformed. You're misinformed by design. And the only alternative, well, you can be uninformed and you can just not pay attention, but that's a lower tier of self-awareness than the misinformed. The best option is to be informed, which is to be aware of what is fake, because what is fake is taken for real by everybody else. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and kind of reiterate here. I'm pointing out examples of the character of Donald Trump that pre-existed, or even some concurrently exist with him, his emergence on the world stage as a politician, and how each of these instances relates to one of these three areas: the Butler event, 9/11, and the general presidency and the scandals involved. The basically Trump as some kind of a wannabe authoritarian dictator. And this is from the perspective of mainstream, that he incited January 6th and it was real. Again, if you think January 6th was real, I would ask, what's your evidence? What's up, They Lie We See? Great memes on X, by the way. I think we need to make a point to share our X accounts. I know X is what it is. It's bot infested, but it's ground zero, for a lot of public discourse, like it or not. It's messy, but it's worth going, because the point of going on there and debating, the point of debating at all, is to make these discussions public so they can be analyzed by third parties. I think the ideas stand on their own. So I'm not there trying to convince people. If someone publicly disagrees with me, they're not my enemy. They're doing me a huge favor, because if they weren't doing it, we would need someone in our own camp to play devil's advocate. It's very useful. So we've been evolving this conversation. I mean, we have to take credit for being the ones who eliminated the default explanation that connections between psyops and entertainment media were the result of some kind of supernatural force or simulation. Like, we thoroughly have debunked that entire concept. Nobody who's serious about this, serious about media analysis or understanding the world, defaults to that. It's a very shallow take. It's worse than the Mandela effect now. And what we're doing now is we're systematizing our observations. We have to be able to categorize them and see what comes out of it. So, for example, the way that the various pre-existing versions of such world stage characters relate to fake events that are yet to come, we're also going to find indicators in the form of repeated directors or writers. Swiss says, why do they need these events to change the laws? They can change them without the psyops. No one's going to stop them. I think what they have determined is that it's easier to get us to essentially build our own cage than to try to force one on us. I mean, if they try to force 1984 on everybody, a camera in every house, Big Brother's going to read all your thoughts, know everything in your head, no privacy, people would resist it. But they sold it to the people as social media. Every social media network you're on is a mind-reading device, self-surveillance. We self-surveil more than the Orwellian nightmare presented as, Big Brother surveillance. Like, that's a lot easier, and they make money off of it. They turned us into our own Big Brothers. So I think that's part of the general strategy, the art of war, the supreme art of war. And when you look at another aspect of it too, it's just probably more efficient. I'm going to find the exact quote, because I think this is like their motto. The motto for Mind War would have to be, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And that's what we see. Why do they need to read anyone's thoughts? I mean, at the end of the day, they print the money, they make the laws. Why read thoughts? I think it's about centralized control, no competition, an incontestable power over everyone, that there's no way to resist it. They've unified worldview, they've synchronized everyone's minds. It's like religion. If you wanted to control the many and you were just a few, religion helps to a large degree, because it puts people into these groups. And it seems that's been the operating system here. Like, our political system is, to me, it's a trap. The political horseshoe theory is not a theory, it's a model they implemented. And that's another thing we need to just diagram, because there are certain things that indicate how programmed it actually is. Like, there's a reason why you'll never find a climate change believing leftist complaining about chemtrails, because they don't believe in chemtrails. But they do think that contrails are a problem. On the right, conspiracy theorists, they don't believe in climate change. They scoff at it, but they do believe in chemtrails, and they think those are a problem. So what you find is both sides disagree fundamentally, but they actually agree, because they both agree that the white lines in the sky need to stop or need to be altered or changed. And both of these are on the premise that man is altering the weather. They just disagree on the cause, kind of like they both agree on everything as far as the thing happening. They just disagree on whose fault it is. LG says, create the problems and bring answer or solution, and we think it is reasonable we were set up. Yeah, what if this is just the most efficient form of government? What if this is a benevolent dictatorship? It could very well be. I mean, this could be some kind of utopia. Someone said I should read or listen to Secret Destiny of America again, because when we talk about Metascript, we're talking about engineered history. How far back does it go? And if you look back a little bit, well, our entire country, America's founding, a lot of this stuff could be part of a scripted ordeal. Maybe some have pointed out, I think Manly P. Hall, that the American eagle is really a phoenix, and that America is meant to burn, basically. But let's look at that for just a moment. I find this to be really interesting. And at some point, we'll do the 1776 to 1619 thing on the political horseshoe. But so America founded 1776. And you have the dollar bill in Roman numerals 1776 with the pyramid. And this is AD. And I had found some Masonic lore talking about the years and how their year of light begins 4,000 years ago. So for Anu Lucius, the year of light, it would be 5776, which happens to be the height of the Great Pyramid in inches. So you have this connection here with 1776 and the pyramid. But now if you go back on that calendar to 1776, and this is according to this biblical lore, I don't believe this, that would be the 120 years after the, quote, flood, when the Tower of Babel's construction begins. So now you have Tower of Babel and America's construction both beginning at 1776 on their respective calendars, with a connection to the pyramid, which is unfinished. It's the capstone with the eye in it, implying that the work is not yet completed or it's reaching completion. And then I would correlate this also with the One World Trade Tower, very Tower of Babylon kind of theme. And this is 1,776 feet high. And if you get close to it, you can see this on Reddit, or just look up the image of it. From up close, it actually looks like the pyramid with the capstone on it. And this is, so the theme here, though, is Tower of Babel, America as Babylon. And in New York, you've got that cathedral to St. John the Divine that has the Twin Towers being knocked over by a tsunami or a tidal wave. And America as Babylon was part of Francis Ford Coppola's movie, which has a lot to go into. We're talking about Megalopolis. Megalopolis had some connections with when it was released, there was this old Russian satellite that broke into 100 pieces, and everybody in the ISS had to duck and cover. And the trailer at the time depicted an old Russian satellite breaking up in the atmosphere with the Statue of Liberty in the background. When 9/11 New York gets another 9/11 in this movie. It gets hit by a Russian satellite, blows up part of New York. But Megalopolis, it's kind of a parody on Trump. It's Make Rome Great Again, like MAGA, but Make Rome Great Again, and Megalon, which all I think ties into this idea and of on the world stage in this scripted story as New York as being Babylon. I'm going through your comments here. LG says these people are serpents. Kenneth Dixon says the eagle ain't nothing but a vulture. I fed an eagle a couple of months ago at the zoo. I went early in the morning, and they gave me these long forceps with a chunk of trout on it to put through the cage. These things are just, they're big, and if it wanted to, it could probably rip my liver out. Lord Laney says the Roman eagle phoenix Byrne transformed into Nazi eagle, which was reborn as American eagle. He will die, and the new phoenix eagle cult will rule for a bit. Well, and the phoenix thing refers to like destruction and then rebuilding, some kind of a cycle. And this is like tying into the Great Reset. And we were talking about how in 2020 you had the bat. Let me see if I can find a picture of it actually. The burning bat, which was kind of a symbol for that year, because it was the bat that catalyzed the entire event, the reset, this phoenix cycle. But throughout 2020, we were just noticing how the bat had become this sort of phoenix in a way. And then I look back at the Dark Knight Rises, where you've got the hole in the building shaped like a burning bat, which kind of has 9/11 references built into it. But the burning bat thing was kind of a theme. And again, we were talking about how Dark Knight Rises had the foreshadowing for 2020 with the mask reference and the spiked ball. And so this is just another indicator. As I was saying before, when we go into these individual movies that have this type of propaganda inserts, product placement for future psyops, these things will reference more than one event. Kenneth Dixon says the final battle could be in Phoenix, definitely in the Southwest. Swiss Chalet says the Grand Canyon is a giant mine from a huge ancient culture. It's all man-made, not natural. That really wouldn't shock me. And when I was thinking about this Phoenix thing, this Phoenix cycle, it kind of occurred to me that maybe, the mud flood I don't really think is viable, as far as there was some kind of deluge that left sediment everywhere and we're literally on top of a buried civilization. That's kind of the basis of the mud flood theory that was being bandied about. But I think there might be such a thing, but not with physical mud, but mental mud, essentially, like a dark age. And that what we're experiencing now with generative AI and whatever's coming next is an inability to tell the difference between real and fake, visually speaking, which is kind of problematic because now you're in this state of dependency that you hope you're not being lied to because you got to have faith in the screen. It gives the screen a de facto appeal to authority that's just built into it now. I saw it on TV, it's real. You can't tell real from fake, but you have to trust the authorities are doing the proper vetting. Like, you won't be able to do it yourself. And I've made this point as well when I refer to the concept of the blindfolded skeptic, is that when you're approaching a staged event, a suspected fake event, you cannot rely solely on the visuals. The visual deconstruction is not going to be a reliable source anymore for making these determinations. You're going to need more information. Context. Kenneth Dixon says, if you're talking to me, yes, I think it's all revealed through lyrics, movies, TVs, all scripted. Let us know. Our silence implies compliance. Yeah, I think that's the case. I think we're given stories all the time, and all of these stories are connected to this manufactured history. And just by being a believer in it, you're helping to co-create it. You're co-signing it. That's what you're really doing. Like, I do think that mass media has supplanted religion. And I think this might be one of the explanations for a lot of the occulty stuff. Like what's with this religious symbolism in movies? Why are they using sun god archetypes? Why is Superman associated with this like sun god savior archetype? Is this, or Wall-E. If you haven't seen Wall-E, it's basically a retelling of the Noah's flood, but in the context of climate change and the ark being a spaceship. But it's the same story. And the symbolism is also intact. So in Wall-E, the kings are now up in the space ark, and they can't go back down to Earth because we've ruined it. They're waiting until there's some kind of sign of life. So they have this little robot that looks like a dove, a white robot with wings, and it goes down and it finds a plant, and it brings it back to the spaceship. So the captain now knows, oh, look, we can go back to Earth. Well, if you know the story of Noah's flood, a dove grabs an olive branch and brings it to him to let him know it's time to go back. So anyway, I didn't see any indication anywhere that Pixar is saying, hey, we just retold some Old Testament mythology. I don't see them admitting that they're promoting this religious myth under science fiction. No mention of it at all. So I thought, what's the point of this? Are they out of ideas? Are they just plagiarizing? And what I think I've arrived at now is that these myths are being put back in as a form of syncretism, where they are in fact replacing religions. And they're replacing them with these secular myths that actually tell the same story. And at the end of Wall-E, the end result is capitalism bad, agrarian communist revolution good, enslaving robots bad, so basically it had this revolutionary theme built into it as well. Okay, let's continue here. Kenneth says, when you read the symbols and words and reverse engineer them, you see the true meaning. Read the reflective. Yeah, I kind of make this point too, that when it comes to this programming, you may not be aware of everything you're taking in the peripheral. Everything that you're not consciously processing. Doesn't matter that you're not paying attention to everything else. It's still going in there. And it can still be used for what I think it ties into the misinformation effect. I was talking about this before. There's a video on YouTube you can find, or on Twitter, where this psychologist is describing how false memories are created. And she has a poster of Disneyland, but it's infused with Warner Brothers characters. And when she talks to people who've been to Disneyland, she's able to ask them questions about characters that were not there. Oh, you saw Bugs Bunny at Disneyland? Yeah, what did he do? Oh, he showed me his carrot. He wiggled his tail. And she's like, okay, they're obviously confabulating, but they don't know. They don't know they're lying. And she said that simply seeing, not even paying deep attention to it, but seeing a Disneyland poster with these characters in there was enough to actually alter their recollection. That's the misinformation effect. And I think movies, entertainment in general, are putting a lot of content into our heads for the purposes of turning our minds into, Play-Doh. Kenneth Dixon says, I really like your content. Kinley brought me here, and I'm glad. Well, what we're doing is we are looking at the architecture of media itself, because it's not what people think. I mean, they think that news and entertainment are separate. But what I'm pointing out is that it's all in the same echo chamber, and there's a relationship between them in a lot of ways as far as setting our expectations. But when it comes to psyops, which aren't conspiracy theories, psyops are employed all the time, and psyops create the fake news events that augment our history, that psyops have a direct relationship to entertainment. And you can find directors who contribute to this stuff. And I think this might be one of the reasons why this conversation has never happened before. Why the conversation of these eerie coincidences between Netflix, the movies, the books, and concurrent events or current events, that this relationship is always described as, oh, we must be in a simulation. Like, it's always been confused and muddled and mystified. And I'm saying, no, we're here to demystify. We don't need to talk about quantum physics and how watching movies manifests the reality and we need good vibes or any of this stuff. I mean, it's fine. You can believe that archons own all the major media networks and that ultimately we're living in some kind of matrix. That's fine. But for our purposes here, I think we need to accurately describe what we're seeing and not rule out man as the cause or intentionality as the cause. Because the instant you say man couldn't have done this, then you're pretty much inserting the divine fallacy where anything can work. And that's why you have people saying, oh, these connections are because of dark occult forces, revelation of the method, or these are because of fill in the blank, mystical nonsense. But there's always this default where man couldn't orchestrate this stuff at this level. And we're here to refute that now, because this Charlie Kirk thing really helped a lot in this regard. Because what we're pointing out is that when you look at a fake event, or say any fake event, and you go back on the timeline, including the real-time stuff, the concurrent programming, but you look at all the predictive content, or you could call product placement even for fake events. And if you go back through all the instances that support that fake event, that advertise it, that condition us to accept it as inevitable, if you go back in time and you connect these things, what you'll find are common denominators. And if you go through all the common denominators, you should be able to ascertain what was on the source script. The Charlie Kirk thing, we had the neck wound on the left side. We had the storm. We had the name Kirk. We had the name Tyler. And we had 910. And these 5 facets appeared in, at least 4 out of 5 appeared in every one of the instances of predictive content, even though they were coming from different conduits, different movie production companies across spans of time, the music video. But there was a consistency. And so what we're looking at here is, if this is the case, which it is, then what can it tell us? Well, it can tell us that that particular event was scripted at least 27 years prior to when it happened, minimum, because all of this content would have been inserted into these different propaganda outlets over that span of time. So you want to know, how could man orchestrate this stuff? Easy. You need one guy dressed in black with a black rimmed hat and a suitcase, and he needs to go to every different production company, every independent artist that reaches a certain strata, a certain level of popularity, and let them know, hey, this year, or this is the particular theme that you need to introduce into your work. How many directors are contacted leading up to 9/11? Like, yeah, could you do some Middle Eastern terrorists flying planes into buildings? Like, they wouldn't have to know the big picture. And you could widely disperse these ideas throughout the entire media ecosystem, creating an echo chamber, and nobody would really have any idea about the big picture. It's super compartmentalized. Brandon MDM says, is it repeating naturally or is it all a show? It's a show. This is just bread and circus. And we're looking at bread and circus clowns. Kenneth Dixon says, the Bible is a playbook or cookbook. More people have died over that book or in that book than any other. My favorite book is Hitchhiker's Guide, and I've never been in a fist fight over it. I should probably read it because it's inculcated into Elon Musk's whole persona. And the number 42 thing has some occult significance that goes beyond just SpaceX. The author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was born on a 3/11. That was pointed out to me repeatedly by Pete Shea. Truman B3000 says, Knitted Anus on Instagram calls out Paul Weissapal on McVeigh resemblance and connection. Yeah, one of the more interesting connections there, because if you go into the McVeigh execution, you're going to find some strange stuff. Like there were conspiracy theories he wasn't dead, that it was fake. They had a 33-year-old perform some classical music piece as he was ascending or descending, as he was being executed. He was 33 at the time on this 33-acre lot, P.O. Box 33. This article about it went into all these instances of the number 33 being connected with that guy's death. And again, he avenged the 33-year-old martyr Dave Koresh with his attack on the Oklahoma City bombing government building, where he killed 168. 19 were children in a daycare. Well, as Paul Weisaball, he was given an award a couple of years ago for rescuing 168 trafficked people. So you have this guy who blew up kids, 168 death toll. And now so this is his character arc. He went from villain to hero. Kind of balances out, right? Balanced out his karma. But that's what you would expect to see if this is indeed some kind of a literary construct, an act. And I think it's an act. They Lie, We See says, maybe those artists don't even need to be convinced to insert predictive programming points because they belong to the same clanship. Yeah, I tend to agree that there's got to be, we have to account for the fact that the people who are part of are probably viewed by others as having high status. Like I always said that crisis acting is the new Hollywood. Like a lot of these actors love to get involved in psyops. I think it's a status thing. I think they see this as being part of the elite. Because like the working class, the masses out there, yeah, they need this. Like they needed church. They need their minds to be moderated for them. They need to be told stories, and we're just going to lull them into this trance. I think there's a power trip involved. And I also think money is what really does it as well. And it wouldn't even take very much. It could be very surreptitious. Swiss says, yeah, exactly. A celebrity being involved in a psyop means they will forever be a part of history. Exactly. I think they all want to get in on the act, on the monopoly, on the worldview monopoly, and our manufactured history. So let's just really quickly, and I'm doing this mainly to get comments from people as we develop the more formal version of these whiteboards. So Elon Musk, he comes from Mars, A Technical Tale, the Elon, the first colonizer of Mars, written by Werner von Braun. And if you look at his persona, when he talks, when he's talking about rockets, you can see that he modeled himself. This is like NLP, like neuro-linguistic programming, modeling, like Anthony Robbins teaches in his workshops, where you adopt someone's traits by imitating every facet of them. Like he is definitely wearing a bunch of masks. There's elements of Henry Ford built into his character. You know, the Ford T, the Tesla. There's the Dearborn Journal where Henry Ford is publishing the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. There's Musk and X. So there's a comparison with these two. There's a great deal of Tony Stark, Iron Man, built into him, which has some connections, by the way. Iron Man has some connections to Mars, which we might get into, and the whole Falcon thing. There's actually a lot of, as far as occult stuff, there's a lot of Thelemite stuff connected with Musk, which is why I would also add Jack Parsons. There's an element of Jack Parsons in his character, but Willy Wonka, and I get Willy Wonka from a couple of things. Again, his eccentric personality, but also the tunnels that he was drilling, the tunnels. And then he talked about starting a candy company, the Boring Candy Company. And then he bought Gene Wilder's house. So I think there's some deliberate connections there as well. Nick Bostrom, the simulation guy, when he talks about simulation, he even matches the cadence of Nick Bostrom. And then we have to add in the 42 stuff and I guess Nikola Tesla. But there's these various aspects that are kind of worked into him. In fact, the guy who played, what Robert Downey Jr. said he was going to play when he played Iron Man, he said he modeled his Tony Stark off of Elon Musk, if you can believe that. But looking at this, I'm just pointing out that the character is a composite. Like, yeah, he's a real person. I'm not saying like Candace Owens, oh, he's an android and he doesn't bleed. Like, I'm saying, no, he's an actor. He might be funny. He might be a competent engineer, rocket scientist. I don't know. I don't know where the fiction begins. I mean, he can't be dumb, but he's certainly an insider. He's certainly part of space fakery. Whatever you think about the space program, it's, you know, I'm not talking about like the shape of the Earth or anything like that. I'm just saying you would be remiss if you weren't going to acknowledge the fact that a lot of it is just objectively fake. The space station doesn't exist except as a movie, a bad reality TV show. Smeekmeister says, Iron Man also ties into King Nebuchadnezzar's dream and the feet made of iron and clay. Well, he had the Falcon rockets going to Mars, and the New Age in the context of the Lima, which is the religion of the Order Templar Orientis. And if you look at the symbolism in a lot of the big rituals like the Super Bowl, this is where they're getting their symbolism from. But the god of this new age is associated with Mars, and it's the falcon-headed god. So his falcon rockets going to Mars. And if you remember on Halloween, a couple of years ago, he wore that red armor costume with the ram on it. People said it was the Baphomet. No, it was a ram. Well, the ram is Aries. It's the goat. I mean, the ram, it's not a goat, it's a ram, but it's Mars. It's a Mars thing. So you have this Mars thing. He's wearing a red suit of armor. And if you look at the Emperor on the tarot card, it's a man in a red suit of armor with a ram's head. So then you have this, association again with Mars symbolism. And in the Kabbalistic symbolism, you find all these correspondences. Mars is associated with the metal iron, just like Venus is associated with copper. So you can kind of see the Iron Man stuff and how it all ties into the New Age. And the New Age, they call it the Aeon. It's the Aeon of Horus. So they have their Martian god worshipped as this falcon-headed Egyptian deity associated with Mars. There's also something else with, I think, Game of Thrones. They have the House of Stark, like Tony Stark. House of Stark has its logo on Mars, if you believe the photos. So I'm like, that's interesting. The Iron Throne, House of Stark, Iron Man, but it's got its logo on Mars. Another one of these connections between entertainment and the bigger picture. We live on planet Netflix, but it's the Disney universe. You can find the Death Star orbiting Saturn. Look at the moon Mimas. You can find the dog's head, Pluto the dog on Pluto, if you look at the pictures, and they both emerged the same year. Yeah, they showed up the same year, Pluto the dog and the planet Pluto. But weirdly enough, there's a silhouette of the Disney dog on Pluto. All right, let's see here. Let's continue. M. Smith says, what do you think flies around that they call the ISS? I would call it an airplane, basically. I have not personally seen any evidence of the space station. And I spent a good part of 3 or 4 years inviting people to present their evidence, because people used to claim sightings all the time. And I made a number of efforts and I tried again and again. And I noticed some predictable responses. People say, it's easy, just go outside and look. Just get the app. I think NASA shut down their ISS tracker on 6/11, by the way. But I'm like, wait a minute. You can't just say, you go look, it's easy. That's like saying, oh, you don't believe in Bigfoot? Just go hang out in the woods. It's called shifting the burden of proof. But when I ask people, okay, so you see this light in the sky that you contend is a spaceship. When and where? Like, I need to know your coordinates, latitude, longitude, what time of day, which direction you were looking. And they always say the same thing. I don't remember. I just remember a light in the sky. So you remember a light in the sky, but you don't know where you were, when you were. It sounds like an alien abduction story, like the aliens abducted you and left you in a field with missing segments of time, probably nude. So I'm like, that's not good enough. So I'm saying, if you're going to claim you've seen the space station, I need to know the time and date. And the more I pushed, the more people pushed back, but none of them provided any evidence. And I noticed, though, a lot of bad claims were immediately dispelled. In fact, I put up this axiom: any light in the sky should be considered an airplane until proven otherwise. And I think I was vindicated in this with the drone swarms over New Jersey, where they were being invaded by Chinese drones for a full month. Millions of videos, people making video after video of these strange lights over New Jersey. And by cross-referencing their videos, the metadata, and flight tracking, Mick West of Metabunk was able to prove that there were no drones. There were no drone sightings. It was a big panic, a drone panic. So I'm supposed to trust people when they say, I saw a light in the sky and I'm pretty sure it was 300 miles above my head at 17K, but I can't prove it with any sort of, like, that's such an, like, if I saw something like that, if I saw the space station, I would definitely take note of it. It would go into my journals. I would talk about it. It wouldn't be this vague recollection. So in other words, I think we're dealing with a lot of faulty eyewitnesses, or people whose evidence should be rejected. It's like if someone goes camping and they say they heard a noise at night, maybe it was Bigfoot. I call this maybe Bigfoot logic. It's like, no, actually it wasn't maybe Bigfoot. It can't be Bigfoot because Bigfoot doesn't exist. You have to first prove Bigfoot exists before you can insert him as in the realm of possibilities. So let's look at the realm of possibilities. Okay, well, Bigfoot's not in there. So you hear a noise, it's got to be something in the box. It's got to be a deer. It's got to be a raccoon or a hiker. You're not allowed to insert the possibility of it being Bigfoot. Like, maybe I heard Bigfoot. No, that would be an appeal to possibility fallacy. It'd be non sequitur. It doesn't belong in the list of options. And I've dealt with this where people say, well, you can't rule out that everything is being done by simulation. It's like, yeah, I can. Because you have to prove the thing first. And to prove simulation would be like proving God. Like, what is your evidence? Like, if you want to bring it into the realm of science, the scientific method, you're going to have to bring more than just a claim with feelings attached to it, or a wishful thinking. Like, yeah, it'd be cool if Bigfoot existed. He would have been hunted to extinction by now. But now, when it comes to the lights in the sky, so you see a light in the sky. It's got to be an airplane, a helicopter, or a drone. But UFOs don't actually exist. In fact, these are government hoaxes. They've admitted it so many times anyway. If you haven't seen Mirage Men, I recommend it. The entire UFO abduction mythology was created not far from where I am. It was created at Kirtland Air Force Base. Special agents infiltrating conspiracy theorist circles online to give them disinformation. So my point is, when you see a light in the sky, you're not allowed to just say it might be a UFO. It's like, well, no, it was one of these things until you can prove this other thing exists. Otherwise, you're going outside of what I would consider to be good faith logical claims. You're kind of leaning on us to believe, trust me, bro. Well, I happen to place the space station in the same area. I classify it as a UFO because I haven't seen any convincing arguments for its existence other than as a bad reality TV show. And I've spent a lot of time on this. I've invited a lot of calls, and the best people can do is tell me, I'm pretty sure I saw it, but I can't give you any specifics. And I did one night, a few nights in a row, I was trying to view it with a friend who was in Denver. So we were both looking at trying to see it. And we're both looking in the same place. They saw a light, I did not, which would lead me to think it was an airplane because it wasn't exactly on time either. And anyway, we ran through all these arguments for the existence of the thing. And some people say, well, maybe they're faking it with a hologram. Maybe they're faking it with an airplane. And my answer is, for it to reach all the transit points on a 93-minute circuit around the world, it would have to be going at a speed that's not actually possible for a manned aircraft or even unmanned. I mean, we're talking 17,000 miles per hour in the atmosphere? No way. For such a thing to exist and to reach those transit points, it would have to be in the frictionless outer space, falling, in orbit. So if you see it, you have therefore proved the existence of outer space. So it's not a small thing to just give it a pass when somebody says, yeah, I saw a spaceship. Well, if you saw a spaceship, then space travel exists as they described. And I don't necessarily want to make that leap of faith. I need to see it for myself. And people will say, well, you just haven't looked. You never look up. What are you talking about? That's all I do. I see falling stars quite often. But no, I have never seen the space station. And I had the app and I looked. And there's always some reason why you can't. Clouds or maybe the light pollution. So when people used to say, oh, it's easy, just go outside and look up, it's not actually that easy. And I was in a debate with McToon over this. And he's like, oh, you don't believe in the ISS? You're so crazy. Why don't you just go outside and look up with the app? And I'm like, have you seen the ISS, McToon? And he's like, he dragged that out because he knew that he wasn't willing to lie, which I respect. He's not a liar. He might be brainwashed, but he's not a liar. And he said, I've never seen it. So you're berating me because I don't believe in your spaceship and you've never even seen it. And you're telling me that I can go see it. Again, if somebody shifts the burden of proof, push it back. Double down. Don't let somebody push the burden of proof on you. Like, we're not the conspiracy theorists. We're realists here. I'm the mayor of Realville. I should take that over since Rush used to claim it falsely. And I don't know where he is. Where is Rush Limbaugh today? He left just in time. He didn't have to answer very much for January 6th. Not that he was a Republican, but he was kind of a lightning rod for anything happening on the right. Like he was an instigator. M. Smith says, thank you for going over the ISS topic. There should be hundreds of videos. Yeah, exactly. Oh, he's in Valhalla, says Dark Ghost Wind. Yeah, I heard Limbaugh was Jim Morrison as well, that they had the same golden mic. Have you heard Rush Limbaugh singing This Is the End? Have you heard him sing on I think it was called like Rush Across America tour? I mean, he could sing, but he called himself the mayor of Realville. Now, is Rush Limbaugh Morrison? Do the wives match? Yes. Are there some interesting connections? Yes. Morrison's death, kind of shady, closed casket. Yeah. There's quite a lot you could say about it. Even in his own words, I mean, I think there's implications. And it makes a lot of sense. And the faces do have a striking resemblance. But there's also, I was just looking into this the other day. I was like, oh, they used to call, Jim Morrison had an alter ego when he was doing drugs. They called him Jimbo. And I remember, didn't they used to call Rushbo, El Rushbo? So there's a lot of elements that kind of rhyme with these two. And then Rush signs off after a total of, I think it was 32 years at the EIB, a year prior to that. So he's got 33 years at the mic. And we have seen consistently the use of the number 33 when it comes to fake staged events. So I was thinking, well, okay, maybe he was here to preside over everything leading up to the insurrection. Mr. Mojo Rising, right, it's an anagram for Jim Morrison. That's right. And he was a poet. I tried to read one of his books. I wasn't into his poetry, but that's just me. But I think that he could have constructed that. His father, of course, Admiral Morrison, some kind of intelligence officer. Kenneth Dixon says, there's no fiction in fiction, and there's no such thing as a coincidence, just a connection. Yeah, there are no coincidences on the world stage. And the world stage exists. You could consider the world stage to be analogous to Plato's cave in a lot of ways. We're talking about a more or less a description of our internalized world, the simulation that we internalize, our representation of it. So somebody that's been lied to their entire lives and has internalized them as truths, a cult member, they live in a different world than you. Their worldview is fundamentally different. They have a different point of view, different presuppositions, and it puts them in a different place. Well, the world stage has collectively put us in a place that is a little divorced from objective reality. And they can't really do much with objective reality because it exists and we live in it. But what they can do is they can add stuff onto it. And every lie that infuses it, every myth, every fake martyr, every fake world stage character is adding on to our model. And these augmentations are what make the world stage. They're not changing the real world, they're adding on to it. So it's infused with lies. Davida Los Liber says, unfortunately, I can't listen to the show anymore. Whatever you're doing differently, it will not cast. Interesting. I'm not sure what that means, but if it helps, I'm going to be using Restream again very soon, which will put us on multiple platforms, including X. And I'd like to get back onto the audio streams. As soon as I'm settled into an office space, the intention here is to increase our numbers. We haven't really been focused on quantity, but more on quality. On this has been a voluntary quarantine. If you followed Infinite Plane Radio, we quarantined. We decided that we can no longer throw our opinions and ideas into Trutherville, where it gets drowned out by very big channels who are locked into alternative media. Alternative media and mainstream media should be considered equals. These are two parts of the same thing. It is an equivalence. They're both operating on the world stage. So whether you're mainstream media or alt media, you're still in the world stage. And the difference between the world stage and what we call the off-world stage perspective is the off-world stage includes knowledge of media fakery, fake events, and the cumulative effect of fake events being history bending or fabrication. So we take into account these, and also the fact that our present world stage rests upon uncontested, uncorrected fake history. And when I say fake history, we're not just talking about retroactively altered in the books or contested facts. We're talking about a proactively created history. And it's proactive because it's created through the daily fake news. So any lie that infuses the daily news works its way into our history books. What's up, King Ravana? Yeah, and by the way, the PSYOP trading cards are going to go back into production. Everything's right now is kind of in storage at the moment. Everything's been on hold as I've made some adjustments. But I'm going to be likely, depending on royalties, I think I might be in a position to get that office space on Moon Street, possibly as early as next week. And once I have that, we're going to turn on the lights. The 24/7 stream, AI agents reactivated, PSYOP trading cards back into distribution, and then open phones. We'll be doing these. I would like to do 3-hour live streams. Hour 1, I talk, I discuss something, and then hour 2 and 3, we talk about whatever is prompted by our discussion. I have the energy for it. I mean, it's not like I have to be forced to do this. This is like my main vocation and obsession. Like, I'm really in this for the long term. We have an objective here, and we have for a long time. This is the infinite plan, and it's reaching a very interesting stage, which is why I have to say thank you all for your participation in this, because nobody's done anything with this information. Nobody has advanced the understanding of it because the whole system relies on our confusion and reliance on their confusion agents to tell us what's going on. There's a reason why Trutherville and the people on Q Street and the Kool-Aid drinkers at Alex Jonestown have no clue about our proactively scripted history. Well, if they do, they can't talk about it, because obviously some of these people are a part of it. Alex Jones is another composite character and construct. I mean, I don't know if he's Bill Hicks or not. It wouldn't shock me. I mean, there's plenty of reasons why people think so. It's pretty funny if you think about it. But it also fits a bigger pattern of comedians being used as red pill disinformation agents. But all that aside, his whole perspective, his point of view is firmly ensconced within alt media. And so, by the way, the red pill universe of ideas is actually a subset of J pill. So, on the left side of the political horseshoe, you have the worldview that systemic racism in the West and oppression is the dominant oppressor, and that's what they're geared against. Like, it's destroying the world, it's destroying people, everything about it is just bad. It's the root of all evil, whiteness. So whiteness is very much demonized by the far left side of the political horseshoe. But on the right side, the scapegoat is always centered around Israel. And the conspiracy theories have always pointed at Rothschilds, or sometimes at reptilians. But whatever they're pointing at, ultimately, it leads to the same conclusion. So red pill, which is where Alex Jones is a way to euphemistically sell people on what essentially is an older take on things, with this idea of blood libel being built into it. That's where you get QAnon. QAnon, ultimately, who do you think it's pointing at? What do you think deep state is? They are able to resell old conspiracy theories by adding new euphemisms. So, David Icke really cashed in on it when he called them reptilians. But my point of it is, far left, far right, each have scapegoats. They're not the same scapegoat, but they have the same beliefs as far as the architecture of their beliefs. Like, we're oppressed, this is the oppressor. We're awake because of it. So to be woke is to be aware of racism and sexism and the oppression from this system. But to be red-pilled is to be awake to this other control system, or to be J-pilled. So anyway, Alex Jones is an alternative media platform. I mean, he's basically there as a propaganda conduit. He can't go off world stage. He might mention, this event was fake, or maybe it was squibs, but he can only mention it for like a soundbite. He can't go down that trail. So like, if you were to say, wait a minute here, you're suggesting Charlie Kirk was squibbed and not really killed? They stop right there. Like, that's the end of their thought process. And I'm saying, no, you should be asking 5 subsequent questions. Like, let's say, okay, so if CK equals alive, well, then you got, who was involved? When was this planned? Who knows? And then, you walk it back a few more questions, and you're like, okay, what was the media involvement? What about the police? What about the hospitals? What about J.D. Vance? Do they all know? It's too big of a deception for a lot of people to believe, but to reveal this would unravel the whole deception. So they can't go there. Candace Owens can't go there. She can say Chinese space lasers bounced off the microphone and melted a hole in his neck. She could have said anything like that. She would. There's no theory she will turn down, but she will never say maybe he's alive. And that's because she knows this. These aren't real investigators. They're not real researchers or journalists. They do cool interviews. They're entertaining, but their job isn't to inform you. Their job is to conform you. And that's true for all media, mainstream and alternative. They're not just doing you a favor, like let's make sure everybody knows all the pertinent facts. No, their purpose is conforming you. And they're conforming you to a worldview that's being engineered. They're conforming you to the Matrix, to the Truman Show. Smeekmeister says, the narrative engineers are losing control, so they've been using the truth community as a red herring and a way to jump out in front of and steer the newest narratives. Is that why they're hyping up scandals in sports, like rigged sports? They want to get ahead of, because like the term fake news got out and it referred to simulated events. And at that time, nobody had pieced it together with the manufacturing of history or its broader purposes, but people were talking about fake events. And then, what do you know? They co-opted the term fake news. Trump comes out in front of it, and now fake news just meant Democrats. Now fake news just meant liberal bias. So they can co-opt almost any word, which is why we got the word auto hoax locked down here. The auto hoaxer is reviled in Trutherville. They hate it because they're in love with their nightmare scenarios. But the word has not been mainstreamed. They won't touch it. Mick Media interviewed me, and they broke down the auto hoaxer, auto believer relationship in terms of how people process information when it comes from the news. That's as far as we ever got. This word it's like a logic bomb. It's like a computer virus. Like they don't want this word to get out because the associated topics and because we have a point. But they'll say conspiracy theorist, or their new term, which I thought was funny, like conspiracist. Like, oh wait, I thought we were conspiracy theorists. Like we had theories and ideas and we're kind of smart. And they're like, nah, you're just conspiracists. And they started attaching conspiracy theories to claims of anti-Semitism and other stuff, which is all planted there, I think, by design. Huji Musi said, did anyone else see the comment about Jurassic Liars 26? Please, Jurassic Liars is a good time vibe. Yeah, Jurassic Liars watches news, picks up on stuff in news the way we pick up on stuff in movies. He's picked up on a lot of interesting codes. Like I was thinking about one, you got Robin Westman, and that's the shooter from the Annunciation shooting. And you have Tyler Robinson. And he said one of the codes he picked up on with fake events was what he called the Manson code. So you got like man and son of man. And these are inculcated into so many fake events. Anyway, I was noticing the Robin thing, but he's looked at names in particular and dates. And the dates are intriguing. You got some pretty significant relationships with dates. Like, just off the top of my head, Harrison Ford, born 7/13, and he's in that movie as president getting shot at the podium. And of course, they altered the trailer because it came out a day before 7/13. And then you have Mark Ruffalo, who's born on 11/22, and he's playing in Mickey 17, a Trump-esque character who survives an assassination attempt. It grazes his cheek, and he poses for the cameras. It's like, okay, you got a couple of interesting connections here with these two actors in roles at the same time portraying a president being shot at, and they have these birthdays connected with this general theme. But it goes deeper when you go into these birth dates where it's like there's some intentionality here. I don't think it's a coincidence that Greta Thunberg and Kyle Rittenhouse, who are annoying extremes of each side, they both have the birthday of 1303. I mentioned Dennis Hopper, who played King Koopa a Trump-esque character in that Super Mario Brothers where they melt the Koopa Towers, the Twin Towers. His death day is JFK's birthday. John Hinckley, the guy that shot Reagan, his birthday is JFK's birthday. So that's another strange. But this is not a random thing. There seems to be some evidences here of these characters with backstories, and their backstories seem to contain narrative clues. Yeah, I can't take any calls right now because I'm operating off of my phone. It'll be a little while. I have to get into an office space. But yeah, the Manson code is interesting. Other things I'd like to mind map out are things like, and these are things that we just noticed, because it's not just movies. Like this is an echo chamber. It's anything. So, January 6th, for example, I was looking at the January 6th and the 1/6 and how frequent this number was popping up. So I mentioned Waco American Apocalypse, and it talked about how the Branch Davidians were being rated over 1.6 million rounds. And of course, that's what the Waco thing, the fire, that's what started Alex Jones off and the whole gun grab narrative. That's what kicked off Timothy McVeigh and Turner Diaries. Then leading up after January 6th, you have the lawsuits against Fox News by Dominion for lying about the election or whatever. And that was a $1.6 billion. Alex Jones had gone on to Piers Morgan, and he said, the DHS has 1.6 billion hollow point rounds, and if you try to take the guns, it'll be 1776 all over again. So we were noting how many instances of 1/6 were associated with far right-wing psyops and characters. Very consistent theme. Same with 6/11. So as we map out these various movies and the predictive content, we are going to take note of the consistent use of numbers and symbolism as it relates to these. 42 is a big one. I mean, with 42, you got the whole SpaceX thing. And you'll see he'll be like, I think it was which one was it? One of his rockets is the Raptor. They added 9, so it went from 33 to 42 engines. But they use these numbers like code. And 42, of course, pertains to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which has deep thought. Deep thought, which gives you 420. Deep thought is the computer at the center of the universe that gives the answer that the meaning to everything is 42. But Jeff Bezos in the Sierra Diablo Mountains in Texas has a $42 million clock, which I think ties into Saturn. Chronos, Saturn, it's a 10,000-year clock. But the 42 thing is not just limited to Musk and SpaceX and their little science fiction joke. It's ultimately, I think, connected to Saturn and this body of symbols that you'll see, like the cube, the black cube, the monolith, time. So it's all about time control, which is why in Megalopolis, you have these individuals with the black brimmed hats, the men in black, the very Saturnian thing, who are just like the strangers from Dark City, and they control time. The design authority controlled time. So you do find a bit of symbolism with this, and I think it all ties in, of course, space. The space program, it's all about control over time and space and worldview. But yeah, there's a symbolic element to everything that we've also picked up on. There's subtext to it, which is further indication of the intentionality of it all. Some scene in a movie foreshadowing some fake event, you could say it's a coincidence if you're comfortable with that after the preponderance of evidence and empirical observations. But when you get into the subtext, like, wait, no, this is too thick with narrative and subtext. It's too rich with meaning to just chalk it all off to mere coincidence. So that's the value of looking at the deeper levels of symbolism here. Because again, multiple layers of symbolism just really deepens the claim that we have that this is all intentional, that there are no coincidences on the world stage. Something happens at the end of a novel that was foreshadowed at the beginning, or a movie. You wouldn't call these coincidences. And when we look at historic events, i.e. any televised fake news event, there's no coincidences. Even the recent thing we were talking about, the crown jewels being stolen during the No Kings protest, while Netflix has a movie out where the necklace of Marie Antoinette is stolen. She lost her head during a No Kings protest. Like, no, these are not coincidences. Dark Ghost Wind says, do you think the prevalence of video games and movies like The Matrix is what led people to be more inclined to believe in simulation theory? Yeah, 100%. Totally injected, inorganic. And look at who promotes simulation. And it's not even a theory. It doesn't even meet the requirements to be a theory. It's not even testable. It's not falsifiable. It's a hypothesis. But I think it was intentionally injected along with the totally inorganic red pill community and the conspiracies being associated with that Matrix movie. I remember the Matrix movie, you got Neo. Was he not born on 9/11? Which some say was the birthday of Christ, Jesus. But then you had the passports, and I think you had the expiration 3/11. Neo dies for 72 seconds, which was 3 days before he's resurrected. Trinity kisses him and wakes him up, which I think relates to Osiris and Isis. I mean, they're all somewhat interchangeable because, he's just this archetype. He's the savior. He's the one. But this movie, again, had this idea of the blue pill, red pill, and you take the red pill, you wake up to how bad things really are, and it's all sim. I think so. But the thing about red pill is that all the red pill conspiracies are just like a worse version of the blue pill world stage. That's why I point out that the mainstream, the blue pill, is the big circle. But the conspiracy theories exist in Trutherville, which takes the mainstream and adds on to it. The additional stuff, the conspiracy theories. So I call it MSM+. But the important point about it is that MSM+ is a subset of the mainstream. It's not outside of the box. It's a deeper level of programming. And these are the ones who question the mainstream. Their skepticism is only pointed one way. It's not pointed at their own claims. And the same can be true of the other side. Their skepticism goes one way, but it's not real skepticism because it's contained within the big box. They automatically believe mainstream. They automatically believe alternative. They automatically disbelieve the mainstream. So the automatic part is what negates any inherent skepticism in the system. Because skepticism is rooted on the idea that you suspend judgment. And that's what we're doing outside the box, off-world stage. We're suspending judgment till we get more information. Like, does this event pass our litmus tests? There's the mainstream version, there's the alternative version, but is there something else here? Like, could it be fake? What are the hoax indicators? And we have a list of hoax indicators that you would have to run through before you could assert something is real. And one of the big pushbacks we've had from not from normies, because they don't pay attention to any of this stuff, but what truthers have been pushing up against is the idea that there are no coincidences on the world stage. They want to say all these things we're pointing out with regard to entertainment media matching the psyops. They're saying this is all coincidence. Well, what if it's not? And I would say it isn't. But if it's not, well, then predictive content, concurrent content reveals the event itself is scripted. And that's because for these things to be coordinated and happen at the same time, there has to be some scheduling involved. These things are not organic or spontaneous. So if they're scripted, they're fake. So in other words, predictive and concurrent programming are hoax indicators. And until you can explain those away, you have no business calling the thing real. These actually contradict the reality of the event. Real life doesn't follow and mirror Netflix. Psyops do. So no, there are no coincidences on the world stage. And really the coincidence explanation doesn't have any leg to stand on in light of Erica Kirk and The Tempest. So if you're not familiar with Erica Kirk and The Widow and The Tempest and her world stage appearances and how it's been responded to and her corresponding character and their life actions that have mirrored each other, if you haven't looked into that, you would have to look at that and then say, it's all a coincidence. But you can't say it's a coincidence because you know she's an actress. Unless you're going to go full Normieville and say she's not an actress and the whole thing was real. So either you have to go with the mainstream version, which is just blinkered by ignorance, or you have to accept something a little bigger than what the truthers are going to tell you. The whole thing was engineered and fake. Dark Ghost Wind says, is this why they got so mad over people calling the subway stabbing fake? Yeah, they couldn't get the subway stabbing to get the traction they wanted because Charlie Kirk happened right after. But they really wanted that to be real. You had Matt Hyde, the guy who's a comedian, who's out there and he says, you are Charlie Kirk and your sister's the chick in the subway. Say her name. And I purposely didn't memorize her name because I don't want to feed any of these psyops. Like, I'm not Charlie Kirk. I'm not some world stage actor playing a deceptive role, tricking a bunch of young Christian Republicans. I'm not a wolf in sheep's clothing. And my sister, my cousin, none of them, my mom, they're not the girl in the subway. But what they were trying to do is they're trying to get you to identify with them. But who was he talking to? He was talking to certain demographics. So there's that. But they need you to believe it's real so they can get you emotionally involved in it. Alex Jones was like, everybody needs to watch this Matt Hyde video. You are Charlie Kirk. And that's your sister. I'm like, I'm not going to get emotionally entangled with these events. It's like the Sandy Hookers coming out. These could have been your kids. They try to ruin Christmas for us. Like, we're here crying by our Christmas trees, and you guys are buying AR-15s for your sons. Guilt trips. Like, screw that. I am not Charlie Kirk. And you have these little kids coming out in these video montages, which I hope are AI. Like, I'm Charlie Kirk. No, you're just some little girl at school. You're not some agitprop composite character designed to psyop the world. I mean, that was a big psyop. But this is a new litmus test as well. And we had this happen with Vegas. Anybody who said Vegas was real, we just dismissed them. And we were right to do so. None of them have evolved. I knew people who claimed they knew people who died there. Like, that's how people used to be. People used to get involved in these psyops. Like, they'd be like, oh, I know somebody who knows somebody. You can't talk about it. They would try to shut you up. You can't talk about that because I know somebody who went to that school and they know somebody who was there. Well, tell your somebody who knows somebody to call in. It never happens. Because they know that I'll call them a liar. I'm not going to be emotionally manipulated by some propaganda film. But this is a new litmus test. If you think Charlie Kirk was killed, we're not the same. What I mean is, your point of view is the same point of view that ChatGPT has. You are firmly ensconced on the world stage if you think he was killed. Now, if you're alternative media and you're on one of these well-paved rabbit trails and you're being breadcrumbed by Candace Owens, no, we're not the same. You're just going to be led in circles. Our perspectives are not the same. You're not including information relevant to even understanding what's going on. You're not paying attention to psyops, to special effects, to the fact that it's the same production company that brought us Butler. And then you also get into the programming elements and then the context in which it takes place. There's a number of hoax indicators, deviations from standard protocol when it comes to how the thing was conducted. Now, a lot of these hoax indicators are used to provide fodder for the alternative types like Candace Owens. You'll notice that. And so you can almost be certain that if they're talking about it in alternative media, and they're blasting it out there on these big approved channels that they want you to see it. Because the conspiracy theory is part of the story. It's not like it's organic. Like they were going to do this PSYOP and they didn't think that people were going to disbelieve it. No, they accounted for it. They have their official conspiracy theory narratives that are planted out there. There's a reason why people are saying, was Kennedy shot from the front or the back? And now they're saying, was Charlie shot from the front or the back? They don't care what you think as long as you think he was shot. They don't care who you think did the shooting. Antifa, Netanyahu, Chinese space lasers. As long as Charlie's dead, the PSYOP worked on you. And I remind everyone, it's a magic show, not a snuff film. Yeah, good one day, the exaggerated signaling, where one guy like jiggles his ear, the other guy touches his nose, the other guy taps his arm. Like they wanted it to look like a coordinated military operation, that Charlie was actually a martyr and that Erica was behind it and Trump signed off on it. Like, so they want this conspiracy to last decades. People will make careers off of the conspiracy theory, not arriving at the right answer. This is JFK all over again, engineered for the same purposes. That's why I said that the rabbit trails that Candace Owens is leading you down are well paved. They were paved back in 1963. Marcel says Heinz did the catch-up. Yeah, maybe they got a contract. You know, Heinz has a contract for all government squibbings. And you know, every mass casualty event that they do these days make use of hyper-realistic simulation training dolls that bleed, that talk. They have squibs built into these things. They got squibs you can wear so paramedics can train stemming the blood flow. And some people are debating, you know, was this done with CGI or was it a squib? And here's why I'm saying it's a squib. Because one, you had eyewitnesses. I don't think they could have screened all 3,000 people for their Government Actors Guild cards. They couldn't all be actors. I mean, it's possible, but I think that's a tall claim. I think that we can look at, it's more likely they used a squib because these are believable. But when you look at the slow motion deployment of it, it appears to be the case that there's this force shaking his whole body, even his hair. Well, a bullet would do that, CGI would not. A squib would do that, CGI would not. So the way that his body physically reacted suggests that we're looking at a squib being deployed, which would explain that much better than a CGI. Not that they couldn't have tampered with or augmented footage with a simple filter before it was released. That's entirely plausible. But the reason why people jump to CGI is that the original footage we got, a lot of it was bad, pixelated, became ambiguous. And people are saying, oh, look, that chair went through the table. Well, that's truth or bait. They want you to run with that because the high-def footage contradicts that. So another reason why you can't automatically believe what you're seeing. You can't just rely on the visuals. You got to hold back and suspend judgment on some of this stuff. Yeah, the GAGs, the Government Actors Guild. It's kind of like the SAGs, but these guys work in fake events. Dark Ghost Wind says, incels are weird, antisocial, and unintelligent, but the attitude people have towards them is so demonizing to a ridiculous level. Okay, so I think incels, and this is part of the bigger Psywar. So 9/11 and 6/11. 9/11 was aliens or alien invasion, outsiders, the terrorists coming in, like the movie Independence Day. But 6/11 has been consistently associated in entertainment with domestic terrorism, which makes sense because it's this inversion. So 6/11 was Timothy McVeigh's execution date, 90 days before 9/11. You know, he was 33. You had Muhammad Atta, who attacks. He was 33, lead hijacker. But this 6/11 has been consistently associated with domestic violent extremists. And what I noticed was they were building up this caricature that was analogous to the radical Islamic terrorist caricature. So the radical Islamists had suicide bombers who were characteristically sexually repressed, trying to get their virgins in heaven, and they would go do their deed attacking the West, the great Satan. And if you look at what they've engineered with what I call MAGA ban and with the incel thing, I think the incel is a manufactured threat. It's a mischaracterization. These guys are sexually repressed, they hate Western women, and they're a threat to society because they're terrorists. So I think the terror cells with their suicide bombers have their correspondence with the domestic terrorists as incels. And they have the same target, the great Satan. The great Satan, and of course, the little Satan, Israel and America. You have the same thing. So I'm suggesting here that, yeah, incels are mostly a construct. It's a ridiculous construct. And it's also a way of emasculating these young men, like, you guys are involuntarily celibate, you can't get laid, like they're shaming them for that. So again, it's a mind war, and it's designed to create this believable stereotype that they could play off of later. And it also ties in, though, to certain values. Like, so Nick Fuentes, he calls himself a voluntarily celibate, a volcel. But his fan base in here are considered to be incels. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that they're rejecting Western women, Western values, women who work, feminism. They want to go back, MAGA, pre-feminism, Turning Point USA, America Comeback, going back, pre-feminist values, pre-civil rights. So they have this idealized past built into their nationalism. So the incel is kind of a holy warrior, a jihadist. He's holding back. So the incel is kind of mocking these individuals who are rejecting progressive women and trying to bring back this idea of the trad wife. And you'll notice a lot of these trad wife pushers, like Nick Fuentes, at various points, and Matt Walsh and others, have all advocated for lowering the age of consent. It's crazy. You get people like LARPsteaders who are like, oh, my great-great-grandmother had 5 kids by the time she was 12. And it's like, what are you guys talking about? Like, it's just absurd. But they're glorifying this past where women weren't allowed to vote, and they stayed home and just were incubators for the state. But this all does kind of correlate, though, with the version or the view of women as characterized by radical Islamists. And I did see, there was a point, and there's a list of them, starting from Steven Crowder, Matt Walsh, and I think even Ben Shapiro. A number of these right-wing types were suddenly all talking about how, don't you hate it when you go to the gym and those women are dressed immodestly? Like, they're complaining about how women are, I guess, not covering their hair. I'm like, where are they getting this from? And this is where we brought up the term MAGA ban. Because the MAGA ban is also heavily against Hollywood and Hollywood values, and ultimately against, it's pretty, you can pretty much see this parallel. Let's go through your comments. Lord Laney says, the higher up the Illuminati dung heap you climb, it's a bunch of theater kids. Yeah, that's true. I mean, there is a lot of theater built into it. You know, they call Masonry the craft. It's stagecraft. It's witchcraft. If you define witchcraft as bending reality, you know, loosely using the term, lying is a form of witchcraft. Psyops are instances of witchcraft, but you know, it's stagecraft. It's illusion, it's glamour, it's magic shows. All right, let's see what else we have here. Dr. Bass Ackworth says 6/11 is my birthday. Okay, well, here's what I was getting with 6/11. So 6/11, you got McVeigh, his death date, martyr, the Turner Diaries guy. Him being 33 years of age clearly ties into the martyr theme and the Dave Koresh, who was also believed to be Jesus by his followers. Donald Trump was shot at 6:11 p.m. and 33 seconds in Butler after kicking off his campaign in Waco. But again, 6/11, 33. In Sound of Freedom, Tim Bellard is given a scapula, one of these Catholic necklaces, to Timothy 611. And I was like, Timothy 611, is that Tim McVeigh 611? Again, we're talking about a QAnon hero. This guy played by Jim Caviezel, who's kind of interesting. We'll get into Jim Caviezel. But they push the number 611, and 611 has been a meme on the right for a long time with this whole armor of God thing, which has been a popular conspiracy theorist and right-winger meme since at least 2017. But the 611, again, has been consistently associated with the right wing, with Donald Trump. And what I'm pointing out is that the numbers that they use when they signify these events kind of tell a story. And it's, it's an upside down 9/11, which would imply domestic versus external threat. Where was Donald Trump on 6/11 this year? And it ties into the time he was shot. He was at the JFK Performance Arts Center, and he was posing with his hands out, and there was a sunset or something. So there's a reddish hue in his hands. It looked like stigmata. His tiny hands looked red. And behind him was a huge bust of JFK's head. So on 6/11, he was in front of JFK's head at this play, and it was Lemez, which may tie into all of this and the whole things thing. But you look into this and you're like, okay, this is another instance of 6/11 and Trump. By the way, there is a lot of Trump 9/11 Back to the Future, but there was a commercial for mattresses with these like CGI sheep, and Trump is like posing in front of a 9 and 11. Like there's some stuff with Trump. We also need to get into the Antichrist stuff. Damien Thorne and others. But anyway, we'll pick up more of these as we go. I've mind mapped a lot of these out, but the conspicuous use of numbers, like 6/11, 42, 33, some of it's pretty obvious. Remember Flight 77 flew for 77 minutes, and it crashed into a 77-foot tall building called the Pentagon. On you had Building 7. Didn't Building 7 burn for 7 hours and fall in 7 seconds? Then you had the 343, the fire department, which is 7 times 7 times 7. And after that, you had 343 die of some kind of 11 lung. But the numbers with 9/11 is what transfixed a lot of people at the very beginning. People who are already familiar with occult symbolism and numerology, they were some of the first to notice that, okay, this seems to be fitting a lot of interesting patterns here. What is with this? I think there's something with the Space Needle, which was turned into a monument on 4/19. So these dates and these numbers, these will be a recurring theme in a lot of these psyops. And a lot of these things are even tested and noted by Snopes. Another thing I want to do as we chart these out is we have to take a look at the psyop, the programming content within entertainment. But there's a third element here. And this third element also refutes the idea that this is a coincidence. The third element are the drills. The drills that match the psyop. So again, the people who are fighting for it's all just a coincidence, we're solely talking about the entertainment programming matching the psyop. That's just a coincidence. You guys can't say that. Well, okay, you got to add drills onto it. And these drills are also planned in advance, and they're quite extensive. There were 88 drills on 9/11. One involved, I believe, 1,500 police cadets playing casualties. So if we're talking about drills, we're talking about scheduled simulations. And if the scheduled simulations are down the street from the psyop and they match it, or they're right before it, well, that's a a notable occurrence, and it's a reoccurring thing. Look at the London bombings. You had the bombings in London, the subway. The BBC had a documentary about how terrorists might bomb our subways. And then while this thing happened, because there were 2 bombs, well, there was drills, and these are done by a private contractor in 2 tunnels. And in those 2 tunnels, they simulated bombs. And guess where the terrorists bombed? The terrorists bombed exactly where the drills were happening.